Career Guide: How to work as a doctor in Sweden. Doctors are in demand in Sweden, just like in many other countries, and it's one of the jobs with a predicted shortage of workers over the coming years. But working as a medical professional in Sweden comes with some specific requirements, so here's what you need to know. The very first thing to understand is that in order to practice medicine in Sweden, you require a Swedish medical license. This applies to 21 different medical professions, but for some healthcare positions such as assistant nurses, you can find work in Sweden without the license, and in some cases, with reduced requirements of language skills. Whether you're eligible for the license, and how to apply, varies slightly depending on your specialism and on which country you trained in. We've split our guide into 3 parts. For those who receive their qualifications from a country in the EU or EEA or Switzerland, for those who received medical qualifications from a non-EU or EEA country, and those without qualifications who wish to train as a doctor in Sweden. For doctors trained within the EU or EEA or Switzerland, if you've completed basic training in an EU or EEA country or Switzerland, your qualifications normally benefit from automatic recognition in Sweden. If your training took place outside this area, you can follow these instructions if you have since been awarded a license in an EU or EEA country and practiced there for at least 3 years, and received a certificate from the competent authority in that country. As for any British-trained professional who is anxious about what might apply to them after Brexit, the Swedish government has said it will continue to recognize the qualifications of all Brits working in the medical and healthcare fields even in the event of a no-deal Brexit, so long as the application is received before Brexit. That leaves aspiring doctors with a very short window to send in their documents, since it's unclear what would happen to British doctors applying after a no-deal Brexit. If the UK agrees on a deal with the EU before leaving, however, both sides have already agreed that medical qualifications would continue to be mutually recognized. The application for a license to practice as a doctor should be sent to Socialstyrelsen, the National Board of Health and Welfare. You'll need to send the following things: an extract from the Swedish Population Register, which is no older than 3 months, your Swedish personal identity number if you have it or valid passport, plus proof of any name changes, a certificate proving your Swedish language skills, a copy of your qualifications themselves, a certificate no older than 3 months proving you haven't been banned from the profession, and proof that you have paid the application fee. Do not send original documents, ordinary copies are sufficient. The fee is 2,300 kronor and is paid directly to Socialstyrelsen. All documents in a language other than Swedish, English, Norwegian or Danish need to be translated into either Swedish or English. For doctors trained outside the EU or EEA or Switzerland, the process is a little more complex. The first step is to have your qualifications from your home country translated into either English or Swedish and send them to Socialstyrelsen for assessment, along with copies of the original documents and identification. The next step is to take a two-part medical exam that tests your theoretical and practical medical knowledge. This is done in Swedish, so you will need to have sufficient language skills in order to pass the test. Because of the language requirement, it's a good idea to start learning Swedish as soon as possible once you've decided to make the move. Even if you're outside the country, it's possible to do this using resources such as the Swedish Institute's Learning Swedish course. To get your license, you need to prove your Swedish is at level C1 according to the Common European Framework of Reference. This means you have a high level of understanding of written and spoken Swedish in varied and complex contexts and can produce clear and well-structured Swedish in speech and writing. A few different qualifications are accepted: Komvux qualifications in Swedish 3 or Swedish as a second language 3, a qualification that meets the language requirements for higher education. After that, you need to take an online course about medical law in Sweden and then undertake a period of clinical training. After that, it's possible to apply for the medical license, which should be processed within about 2 weeks. Training as a doctor in Sweden. It is also possible to apply for a license after carrying out training in Sweden. You can choose to start from scratch by undertaking a degree in medicine in Sweden, and then applying for your license once the 5 to the 6-year course is complete. If you have studied in a different country, you can speak to university admission offices to see if it's possible to carry out a reduced period of study. Another option if you already have a degree in medicine from a non-EU country is to undergo additional training in Sweden, which can be done at 5 locations: Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, or the universities of Gothenburg, Lund, Linköping, or Umeå. This is around 1 year of full-time theoretical and practical study, requiring a high level of Swedish knowledge, and once this is completed you can apply for your Swedish medical license.